Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick Taking Table. I'm Taylor. That's the last time you'll hear that for a bit. If you don't know, we're coming up on April, which is a bit of a goofy month on the channel, so strap in. But last video for Normal's Town is going to be on Dice Tower West. It was such a great convention, and I got to play so many trick-taking games, meet so many wonderful people, and I did a panel. Whew! It was top 10 unique trick-taking games. I have it unlisted in the description below. I'll probably release it a little bit later, but it's interesting. I was extremely nervous, so it's an interesting video. I hope you like it if you do watch it. But also, I just played with such wonderful people. Met so many people in the Joey fam, which is ThinkerThemer, and I did meet ThinkerThemer. We'll get into that in the final thoughts. They're so amazing. But I did want to say thank you so much to Tim, who was one of the people who organizes and runs Dice Tower West. Just such a wonderful person, and as you'll hear later in the final thoughts of a con, he's an amazing Hearts player. So we'll get into that later. Anywho, as per usual, we're gonna have a montage. It's gonna be kooky crazy, and then we'll go to some con thoughts. Whew! I catch you on the other side. Bye. Alrighty, what a montage. The Dice Tower West convention was such a wonderful time. I, again, just keep running into and meeting just the nicest people. I'm gonna go chronologically, because it kind of helps me think that way. But the first day, Wednesday, I was able to play a ton of games with so many different people that I had just met that day. And it started off with meeting Daniel. I remembered I had his sticker from the game table. Look at that, so sweet. He gave me the sticker. We played a couple games I'm developing that are going to be coming out soon, maybe announced in a month or so. And it was really great. We got some good feedback going and played with Chaeha, the wonderful Chaeha. And we were able to kind of dish about trick-taking in a fun way. We played some other, soon-to-be-announced, other games that I'm developing, and it was great. It's always fun to just wheel and deal with prototypes. There's something to like the mindset of when you're playing, especially like a trick-taking prototype, where there's so many levers that you can pull, and it's just like a great format for like discussion. And what did you find that you liked about the game, and what would you change? And one of the cool things was, one of the games that I showed Daniel was one that he was super excited to play again. So that was really fun. There's something to a game you're working on, or a game you helped make, where someone's like, I really want to play that again. It's a really sweet feeling. During that same session, I got to play with Lisa and her fiance Jerry, which was so nice. I talked to Lisa a little bit before going to Dice Tower West. She showed me the kind of the ropes of the con, which was so much fun. She had been there before. And we got to play not only that prototype that I was talking about, but also we played Green Fivura, which I think landed pretty well. And we played a game she taught called Perfumery, which wasn't trick-taking, but it was really interesting perfume-themed engine builder, where you're using interesting kind of card manipulation, maybe is the right way to call it, to build an engine to start making more and more perfume, or more elaborate perfume. That was really, really cool. It was great because at the same time, Mike DiLisio came over from the Dice Tower, and right before we played Perfumery, we played Nuts A Go-Go, which, if you watch any of the vlogs on the channel, is a hoot. Nuts A Go-Go is kind of an insane game where you're reaching into a box and just grabbing wooden pieces as quick as you can, and then you go around in circles and just name different shapes of the wooden pieces, and you try to knock people out, because if they don't have that same shape that you just named, they are out. Kind of an insane game. I showed Mike DiLisio because I knew he was a fan of those Itten Funbrick games, and I thought he would possibly want to see their new game, and it's kind of an insane game. Better played when you have 2 to 3 hours of sleep at the end of the con, and maybe not in the middle of the day on the first day of the con. So I don't know how well it landed, but it is a hoot. I think he liked it. Then I met up with Aaron, who's a huge trick-taking fan, and we've hung out and played games at other cons before, and just such a wonderful, wonderful person. And we played San Datuomo. Not sure if that's how it's pronounced. I've covered this one before, but essentially what it is, it's a 3-player only game where you get cards, and the cards have numbers on it, and they correspond to these positions on a circle, kind of circle. I mean, like, how many sides is that? 8? A pentagon of sorts? Octagon. Oh my gosh. So how it works is players are going to be kind of placing out their pawns on this grid filled with triangles. And if after a trick, one of your pawns is in the area that is enclosed by the triangles. So as you can see here, maybe if like the 3, 2, and 7 gets played, it forms a triangle. And if your pawn is in there and you followed suit, you'll add a bead to it, which is usually good. Beads are good, beads are points. If you didn't follow suit, you remove any beads, if they are there, on your pawns in that area. So it's kind of a weird game where you're kind of bidding spatially in a way. It's kind of weird to describe it that way. But also, since it is only 3-player, it always makes like a triangle. Unless you're off suit, you play like the same number, and then it makes a line, and then nothing happens. So it's really interesting. I've played like 4 or 5 times, and it's one of those games where of every trick taker I've played, it feels like a perfectly balanced between having a good amount of control and having no control. And it feels simultaneously both. Like you have so many choices in the game, you can do so much. Like when you have lead, you can choose the direction that gets played. You can choose who lead. Like there's so much choice. But it feels so random at the same time. I still don't know what to do. I want to review it, but I have literally no idea how. So fingers crossed, someday I can cover that wild, wild game. And then we played Decrypto, which is my favorite game of all time. Go check out Decrypto. What more is there that needs to be said? It's a wonderful game. Then we played Roulette Taking Game, which I think, in Vegas especially, and at cons, it has such a wonderful table presence and such a wonderful flow. If you don't know, we've covered that game in the past. Essentially, it's roulette mixed with trick-taking. You're trying to predict which card is going to win the last trick. And how you do that is every trick you win before the last trick, you get to place a bid with money. And one player is the dealer who gets all the missed bids. It's a wild, wild game. What was really cool was I saw that Dan from Ninja Star, which I played a game with him later, which I'll talk about, was able to show roulette taking to Amy and Maggie from ThinkerThemer, which was so wonderful. And I do think it is one of the best con games. I think it just goes over so well. And speaking of ThinkerThemer, that night I got to meet some people from the Joey fam, which are the fans, or kind of fams of the ThinkerThemer YouTube channel. Like David, who was so nice. And we talked about how Amy and Maggie were showing up, and also that some of the trick-taking games that we had there they wanted to play. And it was really cool because I love the idea of at conventions where you kind of can have a hub that you can always go back to and know that there will be people there who want to play games with you or people who are just so fun. And that was kind of the area at this con for me. Sometimes it's been like James Nathan's area, or Aaron at another con had a really fun area where it was just a bunch of trick-taking people that would always be playing trick-taking in this group. But the Joey Fam, or the Outback that they called it, because they were also like in the back of the convention, were always playing late into the night and trick-taking games, and it was so much fun to just go there. They also had wonderful international snacks like chocolate from everywhere, or even beer from Santa Fe. The next morning on Thursday, I wanted to hit the expo hall because it was showing off a bunch of the games for sale, and there was actually a copy of Inside Job that was being shown off by Cosmos because they're bringing it the English version to the States, which is a wonderful, wonderful game. Go check out the video we have on that by the amazing Tanner. Oh, and what was great was I went to the booth, and I just always like seeing what Cosmos is doing with like the crew and stuff. And they actually had, which was so fun, a bag for the crew. So I officially have crew merchandise. But what was fun was on the way to go see Inside Job, because it was being shown at the demo table, I passed what, as you can see here, I think I have good pictures of it, were signups for euchre, spades, and hearts tournaments run by Envoy. They kind of worked with Bicycle, the playing card deck company, and it was national qualifiers that would give you free entry to the Gen Con National Championship. So big prize on the line. And I think it gave you like a 4-day pass to Gen Con and these trophies, which, amazing. Kind of the biggest thing. I wanted to do spades and hearts because I'm not well versed in euchre. But the sad thing was spades was right around my panel. So I think I mentioned at the start of the video, I was doing a panel on top 10 unique trick-taking games, and that was at 5 p.m. on Saturday. And the spades tournament was like 8 p.m. on Saturday, and so there was just a little bit of conflict, so I couldn't make that one, sadly. There's a Skull King tournament at 9 p.m. on Saturday, which I was close to making, but things kind of got moved around a little bit. So sadly, it turned out, as I was scoping out and scheduling everything, the only thing I could make was the Hearts tournament. So I signed up there, and as I'm signing up, I run into Tim, the wonderful Tim, who invited me to do a panel, and it turns out is a sensational, sensational Hearts player. And it was great because we were talking, he was looking for my name, and he was writing his name, and he told me then and there that he was going to win that trophy. I'll let you know what happens in a little bit. Keep you on the edge of your seat. Getting just to the Hearts tournament, it was interesting. So there's different sides of every person. Some people are a little bit more competitive. Some people are just like laissez-faire. When I usually play games, I'm just like having a good time. But when there's like a competition, I think it's fun to, really get into the spirit. Dr. Rainer Knizia always said, the goal of games is winning, and that's all that matters. So hurt anyone in your path. No, but anyway, I wanted to try my best at the Hearts tournament. So I got super focused. I played a fair amount of Hearts. We've talked about Hearts for a whole month on the channel. And I'm sitting there, I'm talking to Tim a little bit before things start. And the organizer is like, hey, we're going to be playing with the Hoyt rules or something. What did they call it? Yeah, they called it with the standard Hoyle rules for 100-point games. And this involves, they had this huge page for like how the tournament worked. But essentially, you played 4 games round robin, where it was random who you got seeded with, which was like, And then if you got first place, you got 3 points. Then second got 2, third got 1, and fourth got 0. And then whoever got the most points out of that, they had like a final table or 2, depending on if there were ties. So not the best system, not the worst system, because, you could just get randomly set up with some good players, which is what happened to me. And then in addition to that, oh my gosh, I sound like a... So I got tied for 5th. I'll just say it. I didn't do too hot. But I blame it, 1, on that system. Maybe I'm just salty. And 2, get this. We're sitting down, right? So he's talking about all the rules, and people are like, okay, so is it passing left, right, and across, and then hold? And then we do circles of that. And he's like, no passing. We're not doing any passing. And the entire group of people, which I think was like 17 or something, went crazy. They're like, what? What are you talking about? Hearts with no passing? That's wild. What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, we're doing that. That's the standard Hoyle rules. Sorry. And people were going wild. There was someone named Celia who was an avid Hearts player. She said she played every night before going to bed. And she was very upset. She was, maybe some expletives were going around, but she was like, what are these people doing? No passing? What's going on? And pretty much everyone was upset. So it got to the point where people were causing such an uproar that the person was like, okay, let me check the rules. And then they checked and they're like, yep, no passing. And so people were just like, are you kidding me? So then when we all sat down finally, we pulled out, they gave like a deck of cards for hearts, like a bicycle printed deck that was meant for hearts. So it has the points on it. It's like the Queen of Spades has 13. All the other hearts have 1. And then the hearts have like this like golden trim around it. So it's kind of like a fancy deck for hearts. And then in the game, or in the deck of cards, they have rules for hearts. And in those rules, it says there is passing. So then someone was like, well, what about this? And then the organizer was like, okay, I guess there's passing now, but only passing on the card. And then someone's like, what do you mean only passing on the card? And so when you look at it, the passing on the card says you pass left, you pass right, and then you hold. And then left, right, hold. To which everyone was like, what? Why aren't we passing across? That doesn't even make logical sense. Like, if you said no passing, that's dumb. But at least it makes logical sense. You're just like, nope, no passing. That's all we're doing. But the fact that they had left, right, and then no across is like, you never get to interact with that person across from you. And that happened at a couple tables I was at where the person who did really well was like the person sitting across from me, and I never got that chance to like really pass them cards or like interact with them in any way. So that felt a little like, eh. But I'm leading up to the number one reason I didn't win. I sound so salty. It's not a big deal. Not the biggest deal. They allowed... this is like a personal trauma of mine if you've watched the Hearts videos on the channel. There's a variant of Hearts, or I guess not a variant or whatever. There's a way to play Hearts where you're allowed to throw dirt into the first trick. Meaning, in the first trick, you can put the Queen of Spades, you can throw a heart, you can do whatever you want. Usually, especially the main way people play, main in quotes because so many people play so differently, but so many people play where you can't do that. It changes, it adds so much to the strategy of passing, and it's so much more interesting when you have like the 2 of clubs and a high club, and you pass that. There's so many like strategy tips about this, and I've read up so much on this. But yeah, usually, because for a reason, you can't throw points into the first trick. But they allowed it, right? It was a big hubbub, everyone wanted to get that changed too, but after the passing situation, they were just like, nope, we're doing it. Points are in the first trick. So, we sit down, and I sit down with Tim, one of the organizers of Dice Tower West, self-proclaimed winner of the trophy, if you remember from earlier, and then Celia, who was extremely mad from earlier, and then I think it was Carlos, and we're sitting down, and we're playing, and we're going for it, and they've limited it to 40-minute rounds, which is also tough, right? Because they would get to around 60 points, 70 points, but that isn't like a full game of Hearts, especially didn't lead to like players being able to shoot the moon. And so you get this weird stilted shoot the moon. You didn't know if like it was the last hand or second to the last hand, so you didn't know whether to go for it or not. And then also there's like weird timing to where, yeah, since players don't know whether it's the last hand or not because it's based on time and not points, you're just shooting the moon at weird times, and it's like hard to like read. But the biggest salt of all, I am playing, I'm wheeling and dealing, I'm doing pretty well. And then I forget about the fact that you can throw dirt into the first trick. I get 3 or 4 times the Queen of Spades in the first trick. You might be saying, Taylor, why did you keep forgetting? Well, the tournament was like 4 hours into like midnight. Okay, so yeah, I forgot. It was so annoying. It was so dumb. I hated it. And every single time it wasn't like a heart, it was always the queen of spades. So dumb. So I got 5th by a point. If I got one more point, I would have been in the final table. Because I got 1st in the first round. And then I got 2nd or 3rd in like the other rounds. And because of random drawing, get this, at my first table, it was Tim and Carlos who went on to the final 4. And then at my 2nd and 3rd table or something, I was with Ross, the amazing Ross. Ross was so nice. I ran into Ross when I showed up, and Ross was like, we should play a trick-taking game. And then I was like, ooh, are you joining the Hearts tournament? And Ross was so I was like, oh, well, I guess we'll play then. And it was great. We played 2 tables, I think. And he is so good at Hearts. So good. So Ross won, I think, both times I played against him. So the final table was with 3 people that I played multiple times. So that whole round robin situation was just like, okay. And guess who won the final table? Tim. That's right. So I feel okay that in the first round robin I beat 2 of the finalists and the winner of the whole tournament. So I'll take it. That's the loser's way to, grasp at straws and take any semblance of dignity from getting 5th in a Hearts tournament. But overall, it was very fun. It was so nice to just chat while playing Hearts again. When you're at a tournament and players are like super good and everything's very like fluid, you get to a sense where you can just like chat and wheel and deal. I was able to talk to Ross about just like hockey and talk to Tim about like growing up and playing Hearts. Or people were talking about like what they did and how they first learned about Hearts, and it was really nice. It was very heartwarming experience, even though my heart was so warm it was boiling my blood from all the horrible rules changes. Still a little salty. Anyway, overall, the Hearts tournament was very nice. But the best part of that day is afterward, I was walking back from the Hearts tournament from the prototype room and went back to the Outback to go see, like Lisa and Dave and all that. And there they were. It was Amy and Maggie, ThinkerThemer themselves. They were showing up, had just flown in from LA, and it was super late at that time. I think it was like 1 a.m. or something. And it's weird to say starstruck, but I didn't know what to say. It was one of those things where once like you like settle down and can like talk to someone, you'd be like, oh, I have a million questions and I want to like talk to you for so long and have like this really long conversation. But it was one of those things where like we met up and we sat down and I was just like quiet for a while and just like very nervous and blushing, and they were so nice. They were so funny. They asked about whether I regretted picking and pigeonholing myself into one mechanic for a whole channel, and that was a wonderful question. We talked about the idea of like people like your friends or family finding out about your channel and like the aftermath of that, which was really fun. We shared a lot of funny stories about like people close to us who slowly found out about the channel and the repercussions of that. So it was great. It was just like a really warm, sweet talk about that same thing where whenever you meet people who make like YouTube videos or like board game YouTube videos and stuff, you have like, oh, what do you do for this? And how do you handle filming like, the game itself? And just really fun. It's weird to call it like industry chat, but like you get immediately on this like level where you can really dish about detail things about a hobby that just takes up so much of your thought and like time too. But overall, they were just the absolute best. And we got to play Bug Counsil of Backyardia with them. It was wild because we played an 8 or 9 player version of it, and you might be saying, Taylor, that game only goes to 5. Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. There's a vibe where, especially because they just landed, and everyone wants to like hang out and talk to them, and there's such a big group there in the Outback that everyone wanted to play a game. So what we did was we grouped up. So like Amy and Maggie were playing a hand, Dave was playing a hand with someone, and like I was playing the hand with Chaeha, and we were just we were like deliberating on like which card to play, especially in that game, because you can kind of go out of your way to risk it and try to win 0 tricks, kind of shoot the moon. And there's also like, even if you don't shoot the moon, there's like an allegiance. You should totally check out our video for that. But essentially, there is like a lot of discussion or like kind of planning in the game. And when you have 2 players playing one hand, you can kind of get into a lot of like, should we do that? Wait, why do you want to do that? Oh wait, we shouldn't play that card situations. But it was great. It was super fun. The best part was at the very end, a lot of people risked it. They tried to shoot the moon, and Amy and Maggie, I think, jumped ahead and squeaked out the victory, and it was really, really nice. And it was just a very heartwarming game. And then after that, what was really interesting was Justin, who, so kind, reeling all the way back. Tim set me up with a hotel room, and my roommate in the room was Justin, who does the website stuff for the Dice Tower. And the first time we met, we like talked for a few hours and like just dished a lot about like gaming and many, many different topics. But so Justin came down and we played My Favorite Things. It was interesting because it was very late. What time is it? My phone says it was at 2 a.m, so very late. And I think Maggie went to bed, and then Amy was staying up playing with us. But essentially, it's such a crazy game. If you don't know it, check out the video. But essentially, you are learning about people and then trying to deduce. It's a trick taker. You're trying to deduce what they think about things, because then that's how strong your cards are. So like if you ask someone about movies and they give you like their favorite movie and stuff, and then like a movie they hate, you're like looking at them and you're trying to guess which one's the one they hate and which one's the one they like, so that you can try to win the trick. And what was funny was, during the rules explanation, Justin thought that when you choose a category and you give it to someone, you don't write your own, you actually try to predict what they wanted. So usually in the game, you're given like, you write down a topic and you give it to someone. They write down their favorites and one they don't like, and they give it back to you. Justin thought, because he got from Amy street foods, Justin thought he was trying to guess what Amy's favorite street foods were. And so he was writing down like kebab, pretzels, things like that, tacos. And then put them all down and then gave them back to Amy. And so Amy was looking at these and was just like, wow, I really like, that's my number one too. And like, as we were playing, it slowly came out that Justin had tried to guess what hers were and like didn't technically play the game correctly. And that it was actually perfectly what Amy, like what she would have put. So there was a hilarious moment where like, as we were playing, it was a mix of both Justin not knowing what the answer was because he was guessing what Amy's was, but then Amy not knowing the answer because it was Justin's opinion of what she would say. It was crazy. It was so funny to like watch the reveal, and I think everyone was dying laughing because it was just such like a, it was almost like a crazy way to play the game that maybe could be a fun variant, but it was it was wild that it was so true that they were perfectly ranked for Amy's favorite street foods. The next day, Friday, I did a game jam, which was super, super fun. Met some wonderful people, and for like 4 hours, we created a game. It was a pick up and deliver game where the city moves around you, and there's like a shifting mechanism, kind of like Formula D, and it was called Shift, the legally distinct rideshare app. And we got second by a point or two, which was unfortunate, so I just can't win competitions for the life of me in Vegas. I had such a wonderful time. It was really cool to do a game jam. I've always wanted to, and it's really fun to kind of do a group think and just like fall into an idea, and then just like, because you only have a certain amount of time, just like lean into it hard and make a game. But after that, I played with Dan from Ninja Star Games, who so sweet, is sending out a copy of Yokai Septet as part of that giveaway, which is so great. But we were able to play Path to Yaru, which is Fukutaru's kind of drafting, track climbing game, set collection game. Fukutaro did Familiar's Trouble and Idle Hands, which we covered, and has a few others that I do want to eventually cover, but it was cool to see and play a different type of game of his, but still kind of see his touch on it. Really interesting drafting on that one. And then afterward, we ran into Chris Yee, who was so sweet. Oh my gosh. Chris was such a kind person the entire con. And I wanted to show him kind of like a newer trick-taking game, And since we had Dan there, we showed Yokai Septet, which was so much fun. I know this one's kind of a big hit with like Matthew Jude and some other people that know trick taking and find like the nuance in it is wonderful. And I think it landed really, really well. There's kind of like just such a clean pitch to it, like sevens, you know? We have a video on that, I believe. But essentially, it's a game where you sometimes want to win tricks, you sometimes want to avoid them. There's 2 different victory conditions. It's really, really nice. And what was great was we played it with Dan, who's the publisher of the game. So it was really fun to play with him. One thing that happened, which I think is so funny, I've played so many games of Yokai Septet. I've played in tournaments of it. I want to say like 50 plus, 50, 60 games of Yokai. And there's 3 ways a hand can end. It's if one of the teams wins 4 of the 7s, if one of the teams wins 7 or more tricks, or if none of that happens because one of the 7s were dealt out, it goes to like the last trick. And I've never seen that happen. And when we were teaching the rules, we're like, okay, there's 2 ways to end the hand. It's like those first 2 things I explained. And then the third one was like, won't really happen. And then as we were playing, the 7 goes out and like we're really balanced and we're leading to the end, and it actually happened. So it's one of those like comical things in a rules teach where you're like, this will never happen, and then it does. On the way back, really late Friday night, I saw the Cake Boss cake thing, and I bought a cake. Yeah. So that was the end of Friday night. Whew. So Saturday at 5 was my panel. It was a top 10 unique trick-taking games, and I was super, super, super nervous for it. There's just a disconnect in me where I can like talk to a camera and not realize that technically more people are going to see this than people that were going to be at the panel. I don't know how to explain brains. They don't make sense. But I was so nervous for the panel. I was stressing out the whole week. And when it came to Saturday, I wasn't fully done with it yet. And I had all these jokes that I wanted to include in it. And I started like ripping out jokes at the end just because they took time to like edit and in like the mental space, because it was almost like a stand-up routine where like a lot of the jokes had to be hit one after the other. And I noticed, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, you can watch it in the description. It's unlisted. But near the end, I'm realizing that like I'm missing a bunch of the jokes that I had lined up for the end. And so I kind of like rushed the ending pretty quick. And I think like I didn't realize how long it was supposed to go, or like if it was supposed to go a certain length. And it lasted about 30 something minutes. But because I was, editing it up to the last point, I didn't actually time it. And I didn't know whether like it was good or bad for it to be that long. Like, I didn't want to like waste people's time. So I was trying to like rush at the end as well. But essentially the process for like picking the top 10 unique trick-taking games was I picked the brain of a lot of people in the guild and James Nathan, who was such a wonderful help. And I ran into all the different members of the Dice Tower throughout the week. And I was like, hey, I'm doing a panel, top 10 unique trick-taking games. What comes to mind when you hear that? And a lot of them had some really cool responses to that made it into the panel. But the tough thing was first narrowing it down to 10, because there are just so many unique ones, especially ones that are like how do you define unique? Like, is it literally unique? Like nothing else is doing this? Or is it like it does a lot of unique things that maybe like share kind of similarities with 1 or 2 other things, but no one does like 20 unique things, kind of like Caddy or 9 Lives, where it feels so different. Or Letter Tricks, like it feels so different. But yes, there's technically another word trick-taking game. There's sometimes things that it would share, but like it did so many things. Like the sum of its parts has to be super, super unique. So when I finally came down to 10 with like 20 honorable mentions, I was then like, how do you define unique? And I looked up, there's like a Dice Tower video for top 10 unique games. And on there, it was like Quinn's, Z, and Tom. And they all had different reasons for their ranking within the top 10. And some of them we ranked based on how unique it was. We ranked on how much we liked it. We ranked it on how it was rated or something. There was one other one that I'm blanking on. But I kind of gamified it to where I wanted it to be like a good pace of very obscure game. I have DWTTT, or DTWWW, where very indie, not many people know of it, Japanese game from Tokyo Game Market that would be impossible to track down and things like that. And then also games that like people could find, like Cat in the Box and things like that. I am kind of spoiling the top 10 if you haven't watched it. And so I tried to balance it with some old ones, some new ones. So that was part of the reason why like the flow happened. And then I wanted the end to be kind of a mix of, so what I picked was the crew. And I wanted it to be for a reason that you like couldn't predict. Because I always like top 10 lists. I don't do many of them because I don't like having such like a definitive thing, because there's probably another trick ticket that's going to come out that's more unique. And so I always feel like, well, do you update the list? And it's kind of like going back and forth. But the top 10 unique games, I wanted it to be something you couldn't expect or plan on. I never like when you lead to a top 10 and it's just obvious what's going to happen. This happens sometimes when there's multiple people in a top 10, when someone's like, my number 5 is this one, and someone's like quiet and yeah, I'll put in my 2 cents later, and it's like, okay, well, we know what your like number 2 or 3 or 4 is, right? It was tough, right? So I thought that the crew being number 1 was a good example of A, does a lot differently, and then B, like it is just such a singular game for the hobby at this point. Going back to what I said about like how I don't often do top 10s is because of that whole, do they get stale and how do they live? I feel like leaning into the idea of, oh, I'll do a top 10. It might not be, you know, a top 10 that'll work for a while because so many unique trick-taking games are coming out. But I like the idea of like a top 10 that is of its time period and is leaning into the feeling and the kind of the zeitgeist of trick-taking right now. And it feels like the crew is definitely the most unique game from all those angles. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry for waxing poetic about the philosophy of a top 10 list. But if you aren't asleep, I'll talk louder so I can wake you up. But if you aren't asleep, the top 10 went well. It was so wonderful. So many of the people that I mentioned in this whole talk came, and it was wonderful because Chris came, even though I feel bad because there's like a Mike DiLisio joke. And I was just like, ooh. I have a joke that I'm like, who's the best member of the Dice Tower? And the joke is that I'm like in love with Mike DiLisio. But I was nervous about that joke. I had to like, I felt the need to go up to Mike and be like, hey, is this okay? Before I did the joke. Because I thought it'd be creepy if he found out I have all these like photoshopped Titanic pictures of me and him in my presentation. The crowd was amazing though. I had like that text input, and they were so funny and like had such good inputs, and someone was talking about like Pinochle, which I think is wonderful. There's some really cool moments where people were actually responding, which was really sweet. Then I met Rahdo from Rahdo Runs Through. Huge inspiration. He's just such kind of like an icon in this space. I heard his voice from across the hall. He was at the exhibition hall with his wife Jen. Jen was doing her gamer class, and it was super great because I actually bought. Oh, I'm knocking over things. It was super great. I had always seen some like gamer glass stuff, and I bought some of it because, you know, it's one of those classic things to me is watching old Rahdo videos and like seeing him use the gamer glass for pieces in the game with Jen. So that was really sweet. It was fun to meet them. They were so kind. We dished about ChatGPT and stuff because I don't know if I've said this. I do software development for my day job, and I was able to talk to Rahdo because Rahdo also did like video game development. So we dished on software and the state of software. And that was really fun. It was a really nice conversation. And then it was so nice, perks of doing development work for Allplay. I met up with Joe, and we played some of the new Allplay titles that are coming out soon, I think next month. And I got to play with Peter Hayward, who did That Time You Killed Me and Fiction, which both sensational games. And Nick from Bitewing Games, which was great because I hadn't played Zoo Vadis, and we were like talking about Zoo Vadis. And after playing with him and like hanging out and playing one of his prototypes, I was like, I really got to try Zoo Vadis. And then later that night at like 3 a.m., because it was daylight savings time, so we lost an hour, so kind of 2 a.m., I played Zoo Vadis. Maybe I shouldn't jump around. But rolling back, we played Peter's prototype, we played Nick's prototype, and we were bouncing around with some of the new ones from Allplay, and it was so much fun because like often I'll playtest. I like getting point of view of people who don't know the genre or the mechanic. So trick taking, for example, like people who are new to trick taking. I like playtesting with them. I like people playtesting who like the theme. Also like sometimes gamers or like things like that. But I haven't playtested with people that are like more in the industry. It's been usually just, you know, friends or like other gamers or like store owners. So it's really fun to playtest with Peter and Nick and have their eye on designs, because they like can cut to the quick on what is off about a design, or like they will be able to like articulate. It's funny that I stumbled over the sentence, they will be able to articulate. But they're able to articulate the parts of a game that might feel off. So I find like this, it's really helpful to me to sit with a feeling if something's off in a game. And even though I sit with it for a while, I'll like come up with the words as I'm mulling over it. But they were just so immediately and quickly able to see something, play something, and be like, oh, this is what's wrong. So it was really, really interesting. It was very impressive. But after that, I got to hang out with the Joey fam. There was a little bit of a hangout mixer of sorts. And I met and got to talk to so many more of the fam, like Dawn. Oh my gosh. And everyone was just so sweet. A great mix of people who just love games and love to chat about games and the intricacies of it and kind of like the whole community part of games. It was really, really sweet. There was some really like wonderful conversations. And it was, you know, it was late at night, so it was always like a fun vibe. And then after that, I played Vadis with Brain in a Jar and Benita, and who else was there? So it was Daniel again from the game table, and it was also, I think, Nathan and Andrew and Chaeha. It was a 7-player game of Vadis, and so not trick-taking, but it's like a Knizia game where there's like above-the-table bartering, and you're just trying to get to the top in a way, but like get points, and everyone has kind of like a power. It was wild. To negotiate that late into the night was very interesting. But everyone was so kind. It was the first time I met like Benita or Casey, which Brain in the Jar. And it was wonderful to see like the different negotiation styles and the different ways that players could like bounce off each other. I'm a little bit of like a meek person when it comes to like negotiation games. I kind of like sliding into places. I think I did okay, but there's some of us who were definitely much better and much more cunning. And but like overall, Vadis was so much fun. Sunday was sadly the final day, and I was leaving a bit early, so it was also bittersweet. But it was great to talk to Amy and Maggie again, and Tim, and it was kind of like a tour and saying goodbye to everyone, like Dawn, and you know, Edward and David, just like so many nice people that I met for the first time at that con. But it's one of those meetings where you're just like, these people are so kind that I can't wait to go to another con and meet up with them and play again. Especially Aaron and Chaeha and, oh my gosh, Lisa and Jerry. It was just so many wonderful people that you wish the con could last for weeks and weeks and weeks. Especially, look at this. Look at Chaeha's shirt. An original Scout shirt. Like, come on. So that was Dice Tower West, and again, just such a wonderful convention. I got to play with so many amazing people, but then also just I got to run into like Ruel, which was so great, and Alex from Board Game Co. And all the Dice Tower people were really, really kind. Just, you know, Tim, Eric, Tom, Mike DiLisio was very kind. And Chris Yee, oh my gosh. The fact that he went to the panel and chatted afterward just like means so much. It blows me away that some people are just like so kind. Just another wonderful con that makes me feel very lucky to be a part of this wonderful board gaming community. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you at a con. Bye!